Hey guys, in this RedditGamingTech.com video we're going to be talking more about Ouya, which is of course the Android open source console, which is going to be released for about $99. We've actually got some specifications on this one now. They've been floating around for a while, so I'm pretty sure most of you would have heard of some of them. But it doesn't hurt to just go over them again, just because really. Anyway, we've got a Tegra 3 quad-core processor, so quite a lot of computing power there. A gig of RAM. That's 8 gigs of internal flash for your storage for games, downloaded content, that kind of thing. HDMI connection, very standard now. A Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and one USB port. I'm surprised actually they've only got one. It's also only a USB 2. Would have liked to have seen USB 3 and maybe even a couple of them. I suppose you could probably daisy chain, however, off with say a USB portable hub or something similar. You also get wireless controllers with standard controls, analog sticks, blah blah blah. Android 4.0 is the operating system, and Ethernet. Now, bear in mind that these guys are highly encouraging you to be able to tear apart the system, and make changes and so on. So no doubt we'll see quite a lot of tweaks operating system wise as well. Now, if we're actually looking at the controller, it does somewhat remind you instantly of the 360 pad. In terms of overall layout, it does of course miss a few little quirks, but overall looks very similar. I'm hoping the analog sticks are of slightly better quality. Oh, should I say the D-pad is of slightly better quality. The D-pad for the old style 360 pads, the older models, is pretty terrible. Therefore, if you're trying to do, say, let's go with a Shoryuken on it, it's not exactly going to provide you the ideal environment. That's not to say that you can't. It's just a little bit trickier than, say, the PlayStation 3 pad, which I personally prefer for fighting games overall. On the other hand, I do prefer the button layout on this to, say, the Wii U pad. The Wii U's is a little bit weird, actually, in terms of button placement. I'm talking the Pro pad, of course, with basically the right analog stick and the buttons being switched around, which is somewhat odd. Anyway, if we actually take a look at the power, of course it's more RAM and so on than, say, the 360 or PS3. I'm pretty sure most of you know this by now, but the 360's RAM is, of course, distributed completely differently to that of the PS3's. The 360 and PS3 both have 512 megabytes, so right away we've got double the amount of RAM. However, of course, the 360's is basically unified. In other words, however the developers want to use the RAM, it can be done. Whereas on the other hand, the PS3 has 256 for the GPU, 256 for the CPU. It's debatable which one's a better configuration. Generally, however, most people believe that the 360 is a slightly easier system to program for. So there you have it. It's going to be a very interesting thing because obviously open source is the name of the game on this one. And to be honest with you, I think the idea behind the curtains kind of thing is to give developers such as, let's go with Electronic Arts, not that I hate them or anything, I'll just pick them out of the hat really, a rabbit punch for, of course, releasing games such as Battlefield 3 and goodness knows what else consistently. That's not, once again, to say that games such as Madden or whatever else are bad quality. Once again, by the way guys, if you can hear a little bit of rumbling in the background, that's not my stomach, I promise you. It is actually, we've got a bit of a thunderstorm actually in the UK. If you've been following my videos recently, you'll know we've had a ridiculous heat wave. Apparently that's kind of come to an abrupt halt from a pretty large thunderstorm, although we're on the tail end of it. Anyway, as I was saying, so most of you are pretty familiar with the prospect of console gaming by now, I'm pretty sure. So the idea of actually a bit more open source and the ability to more of us to be able to play and program for the console, it's basically there not only to rekindle the love affair of, say, you and I for gaming, particularly the more jaded among us. I'm not saying I'm particularly jaded, I'm not actually, but quite a few people are becoming jaded with the consistent release of new games that aren't really that innovative, particularly by companies. No, that's not to say I can blame a company. Let's be honest, if you're going to spend millions on a game's development, and I kid you not, millions, I mean, some of the games are really expensive to produce, as particularly as now you've got, say, let's go with Martin Sheen giving the voice. Obviously, he did the voice of Elusive Man, for example, in Mass Effect. They're not going to just do that for a bag of cookies. They're going to charge for a decent amount for that, for voice acting alone. And obviously, you've got 3D animators and apparently thunder as well. That you can get that sound effect for free apparently. So with all of that, obviously the price of games is spiraling, so you can't blame them for going with something that doesn't really go against the grain somewhat. Of course, some innovation is always good, because let's face it, you're not going to keep buying the same game over and over and over again with no changes whatsoever. That's just ridiculous. However, you do want some changes that are, you know, reasonable. You do want something that's going to, however, stick, and you know they're fairly sure is going to sell. That's why games such as, let's go with Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evils, and so on, they're always going to come out, and they know that, yeah, if they release, let's go with Resident Evil 6, it's going to sell well. It's just inevitable. They'd have to really badly screw up the game for it not to at least make the money back. So there's that. However, with indie developers, and there are some really great examples of this, on the PC for example, we have games such as, let's say with Limbo. Limbo is very, very pretty in terms of the fact it uses stencils. I've mentioned Limbo a few times, guys, I know, but I just think it's a really good example of the fact that it doesn't require the most amazing graphics. It's not 3D or anything, but it just looks very good. The same goes with, let's say, Trine 2, for example, looks very, very, very nice. It's 2D, it's complete 2D animation, which of course most developers now are running away the opposite direction. You could always argue, however, Ubisoft with Rayman Origins, which is one of the rare examples, actually one of the bigger guys are really getting involved in 2D, but for the most part, unless it's fighting games, most developers are staying away with 2D as if it's going to give them, you know, some horrible, incurable disease, which is kind of understandable. I mean, most people just don't want that anymore. So, anyway, I'm kind of drifting off the point somewhat. Now we know that, of course, that Ouya is going to allow you to do a lot more stuff. It's going to have a somewhat channel-like experience, actually, a little bit like the old Wii. Obviously a little bit different, to say the least, but still, the point being that this console is going to be $99. I mean, let's just be honest. It'll be interesting to see, by the way, what they price that in as, say, the UK. I would not be surprised at all if it's going to be about £99 once again. You know, conversions don't necessarily equal happy times. I mean, for example, we would expect to pay about 75, but obviously by the time you increase that and everything else. But anyway, I'm ranting again. Anywho, the point being, the prices are very good, and I have no doubt that this could sell very well. And it has another benefit. It's going to help to promote smaller developers. It's that simple. And of course, it's going to be on the Android operating system, which is another really good thing. Let's just be honest, the idea of being able to release a game at a lower cost, one of the great things, of course, about releasing a game on say, the PC, is there's not really that many licensing costs you have to worry about. I mean, obviously Steam are going to take cuts or whatever if you decide to distribute it like that, and so on. But other than that, you don't really have to pay licensing fees or that kind of thing, and you don't have to jump through hoops. That's not really the case with, say, let's go with the PS3 or 360. Obviously, you have to go through quality checks and so on, which is fair enough. I can completely understand, let's go with Microsoft Point. They don't want to release a game and then it crashes so badly it locks up a system or, you know, deletes save games or what have you. But obviously that adds to the cost and so on. Now, obviously, there are going to have to be some quality measures on this, because obviously they don't want just anyone to release anything that doesn't work properly or damages their reputation. As I was saying, however, you can quite easily root this thing. Now, I'm going to actually be covering rooting in another video, probably for cell phones. Just give you guys a brief overview, actually, of a few good programs that I use personally on my rooted Android. However, in this case, it does not void your warranty, which, come on, that's just insane, to be honest with you. That is very impressive. I'm a little bit concerned over that, actually, not because, you know, I don't want people to root or anything, because obviously that's just going to add innovation. I'm more concerned in that it's going to cost the company a lot of cash. I don't know if that's a business practice, because let's face it, some people are real chimps. I'm sorry if that offends some people, but some people are chimps when they, you know, open up consoles or what have you, and I've seen some really bad horror stories. I kid you not, I've actually been called around a friend's house, and he was panicking because he had no sound, because he'd been messing around with his PC. And I kid you not, the reason he had no sound is because he had turned off his speakers and he had not realised it. And I'm actually being serious on that one, guys. I know you probably won't believe me, but I'm actually serious. So I wasted, like... As I was saying, I wasted a good 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, checking things out, and I was like, why is this not working? And I realised it was his speakers. Anyway, once again, I'm going on a tangent, but never mind. As I was saying, with the hacking of the Ouya, it's actually fairly easy. You can do everything. You can open standard screws, which is nice. In other words, there's no specific screws where you have to basically do a rain dance to open the damn thing. Hardware hackers can create their own peripherals, which is pretty brilliant. That means you can actually, for example, easily improve the controllers, or, for example, put together your own arcade sticks, which would be really cool, of course, for modders. Obviously, modding your own arcade stick for, say, the PS3 or 360 is a bit of a chore, in that you require a sacrificial lamb of a pad to, put something together. Usually the Mad Catz wired controllers or something are those sacrificial goats, but still. Anywho, and you can connect via USB or Bluetooth and so on. You want the design, you can basically just go ahead and open it up and change it. This is going to be very impressive. I would be actually surprised, given the ridiculous amount of modability on the older consoles, such as, say, PlayStation 1. You can overclock the PlayStation 1 heavily, although many people don't know that. And you can do stuff like, say, the Genesis or Mega Drive if you're in Europe, for example. You can actually do some really insane stuff, and you can actually vastly improve the video and sound output. That's not going to say it's going to turn it into high definition or whatever, but you can improve it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they'll allow you to be able to easily change or add extra RAM. For example, bump that sucker up to 2 gigs. Why not? Mod it so you've got extra built-in USB ports, or change the entire system. One of my friends actually had a really interesting project with an old GameCube. He decided, this is back in the day, of course, when GameCubes were fairly modern. This is before 360s and so on released. He actually modded his PC case and stuck the GameCube in it, and used an internal TV card, and plugged the GameCube directly into the TV card in his PC. So he basically had a front-loading GameCube, or actually top-loading, GameCube. So you could just pop that sucker in, and it just loaded, and then you just press a button basically, and TV out. It's pretty cool. I don't know if it's exactly the most sensible of design decisions by him, but as I've said before, don't question why you should, but just why you shouldn't. And I think that's one of the cases where he was just a bit kind of curious to see what he could kind of get out. Anyway, once again, I'm really going off the tangent here. I'm actually really excited about the Ouya. At first, I had my reservations, mostly because I was more concerned about what people's interest would be in the system. And also, I wasn't really sure if it would have a market. In other words, would people such as, let's go EA, or BioWare, or Sega, or whomever, would they really be happy to put their weight behind this and say, yeah, we're going to develop for this guy? I mean, I don't think we're going to be seeing a massive level of commitment at the start, but I have a feeling this could be a runaway kind of success. Particularly, once again, it's an Android operating system. That means it's going to allow a lot of guys, such as Rovio, for example, who are obviously responsible for, say, Angry Birds. It's going to allow them to easily say, hey, you know what, we know this operating system, so let's just, improve. And that's going to be really cool. It's also, once again, going to allow more bedroom programmers to come back. I mentioned in a previous Ouya video that I remember the day of bedroom programmers. This wasn't even too long ago, to be honest with you. Even back in the days of, let's go with Quake 1, there was a huge modding community. Now, that's not to say the modding community isn't around anymore on PCs, because that's obviously completely rubbish. We have, say, Skyrim, And one of the reasons that Skyrim is still fairly popular, one of the reasons I believe it's a very good game, isn't because of what Bethesda did. I'm not saying that they, did a bad job or anything. But one of the primary reasons is because of the mods. Now, obviously, if you're a console owner, that doesn't really help you. But for PC gamers, Lockpick Pro, for example, I've mentioned this in a previous video. I'm really sorry about the thunder, guys. It's not really going to be convenient to record later. I would just, hold out, but it's really loud. I'm so sorry if it's, bothering you. But as I mentioned, Lockpick Pro, that's a really good, innovative add-on. Now, I know some of you will say that add-on's cheating, and I completely agree. It does make it too easy, but the point being, I hate lockpicking. I despise it. I can't put it any better than that. I actually physically despise lockpicking. I just do. And so the ability to actually take that part out of the game, or at least make it so that it doesn't frustrate me, so I can get on doing the parts I do like, is really pleasing to me. And obviously that's down to modders. However, modding now is becoming less prevalent on the PC, and this is because a lot of developers now are, of course, doing a lot of DLC stuff. And obviously, let's just be blunt, most of the time you can't do a huge DLC patch if people are gonna have already made so much other content. You could always argue, of course, the DLC stuff could be a lot better, but it certainly takes away, say, Capcom's ability to sell you, let's go with costumes. Because, hey, if you want to make Blanca, let's say, wear pink with, Super Saiyan hair, I'm pretty sure a modder could release an unofficial patch of that, and of course you could get that for free. So obviously, that's one of the problems. So the modding community is still there, it's still big, but it's just not as big as it once was in some regions of games. And of course mods are what really made something like, let's go Counter-Strike popular, which obviously started life back in the day as a mod for the original Half-Life. So basically they want to start making mods and everything else really big again. They want to start making it where it's more available, more easy, open source. It's just going to look good, of course. And they also really want to push the free-to-play model. This is, of course, games like League of Legends, which is, let's just be honest, massive. Team Fortress 2, you might have heard of that one. And many other games. They just basically want to make free-to-play model games really big. So, of course, microtransactions can be a part of this. And that, with easy modding, it basically means that you can, for example, put together a game, put it on the marketplace, have people buy it, and then you can go ahead and start selling them really cool little things. So, for example, you could, you can put the first-person shooter, and you can have, let's say, a multiplayer aspect of that. But if you want, say, another 4 levels, they have to pay. But the basic, run-of-the-mill game is, free. That kind of thing. Maybe experience perks and that kind of thing they can pay for. This is very standard stuff, of course. I'm not mentioning anything particularly amazingly unique here, but I'm just going with the basics. That isn't to say that model doesn't have a few problems. There are a few games, I'm not going to bother to mention them, on the Android marketplace, for example, where you can get a certain level, let's go with a certain amount of progress in the game, and then if you don't pay, the enjoyment is quickly sucked out of it, as though you've just entered the event horizon of a black hole, and you can feel yourself experiencing spaghettification. It really does feel like that, because you just know that if you don't cough up money, that you're not really going to progress any further, because they've just structured the game where it's really, really, really difficult and there's not enough decent drops, or you're going to be basically tearing your hair out to collect the cash for weapons upgrades or whatever. That's the only problem with those models. So I'm hoping there will be a slight limitation on stuff like that, but the fact that it's a very beautiful kind of thing, it's going to be very nice. And obviously now they don't really need to worry so much about, let's say, a source development kit, because any Ouya is a development kit. Now let's just put this into a little bit of context. SDK, a source development kit, UNI, is expensive. It also requires a lot of licensing. You basically have to get hold of it quite, through some hoops. It's not difficult, if you're a games developer, but it's also a lot more expensive. There was, I believe it was the PlayStation 1 on almost 100%, and I can't remember what the name of it is. I know the second I stop recording, I'll remember the name of it. That's the annoying thing. But there was a PlayStation 1 development kit that was available to the open public, and I believe it cost about 500, maybe 600. And you could link that to your PC, and there was a few extra changes to it, such as, for example, it would read blank CDRs, that kind of thing, or standard CDRs. And the purpose of that was to help promote the PlayStation 1's development for games, and that was good. That was actually a good move on Sony's part. The problem was, it wasn't particularly that successful. It could have been better. The slightly expensive price, as well as back then limited technology. CD burners were fairly new. A lot of people did have them, but still. And also there wasn't a massive amount of instruction, that kind of thing, I believe. I wasn't particularly into that. I was fairly young at the time, as you can imagine. Regardless, Ouya, that's not the case. You buy an Ouya, and it's a development kit. You root it, for example, and you've got a lot more control, that kind of thing. So you can produce games so much easily. You don't need to worry about difficulty. That means that you could theoretically produce the next massive game. If you happen to know, let's say you happen to know a texture artist, and you happen to be a level designer, and another person happens to be really great with sound, and another person happens to be able to code really well, so on and so on, then you could collaborate, and you could potentially create yourself a small little company. And hell, it doesn't even have to be a company. You can just call yourself something after you put a web page together, and you can WordPress that sucker, and then you can just put something out there, and you could potentially create yourself a game that sells a lot. It could be big, and this is similar to what's happening to PCs now. This is what's happening to PCs now, but this is possibly even better than that, because obviously it's a lot wider marketplace with the Ouya. So this is very exciting stuff. I'm extremely pleased with this, as you can probably tell from the enthusiasm in my voice, with the fact that it could potentially change the marketplace. That's not to say that I hope, for example, that let's go with, I know I keep using them as an example, I don't know why, but let's just go with EA. I don't want them to go out of business. I honestly don't. I like EA. I think they have produced really great games, such as, published great games. Let's go with like Mass Effect once again. I do have issues with some of their marketing and business practices. For example, I personally despise the fact that I'm most likely never going to see another Dungeon Keeper again. I've probably mentioned this a few times down videos, and I apologise if I bore you with it, but it just does, upset me, because Dungeon Keeper, Magic Carpet, Populous, all of those games are amazing. I really feel bad for anyone who has not, particularly back in the day, really got to experience those games. I've mentioned a few times to Amata, for example, about Dungeon Keeper and Magic Carpet. They were incredible games, and I would love to have seen what would happen if they'd actually have continued that, or release one now, because I think it would have, with today's technology, it would have been incredible. But anyway, back in reality. Now, of course, I would like to see new consoles like this. So it would be interesting to see what, guys, if there's going to be new Peter Molyneux, if there's going to be new, John Carmacks. So this console could potentially turn you and your friends into that, and it could possibly add a lot more to the hype of gaming. Maybe we could start seeing a lot more home development, basically, is what it comes down to. And the fact that it's $99 as well. Even if you're not a games developer, even if you have no interest in it, even if you're someone who plays for like, an hour a week, because that's all you've got time for, or that's all you really want to play for, or you only want to play when your friends are around, that's fine. It's $99. I mean, that basically means for $100, that's nothing. I mean, let's just be honest, in gaming, I don't know what the games are exactly in the US, but I think they're around, what, $60? Someone can comment on that. I haven't gone to GameStop or whatever, but that's just a pure theory. I think it's around maybe $50 to $60 for one of you guys to have a game. I know in the UK it's around maybe 30 to 40. It's generally around 30 on the PCs, and it's about $40 on console. depends if you buy it offline, but you're looking at about between, 30 to 40. Let's go with 35. And so, that basically means, even if it's released for 100, that means 2 games, and you've basically got yourself a console. That's a really good deal. That means a lot of, families are going to want to buy this console for their kids, because it's a cheap present for Timmy at Christmas, or, their birthday. That's very impressive. So it's very smart that they release it at this price. It also means that, of course, power is a lot less of an issue, and, of course, with modability. Anyway, guys, this is turning into a massive, massive thing. I actually didn't mean it to be anywhere near this length. So I apologise if I bored your socks off with this rant, but not really a rant, but this it's musing, if you will. So I'm going to be keeping a really close look on the Ouya, and I'm also going to be doing a lot more of these type of videos, because you know what, I think it's very cleansing for the soul, if you will. I have a lot to say, as you probably can tell by now, and to be honest with you, despite the fact that RGT does do a lot of first impressions and so on, we actually really did do that for a while. But to be honest with you, it's because there were so many games being released in such a damn short period of time, and obviously Marta and I are both working, plus with the website and everything. I know I've said this before, but it just didn't really leave us that much time. And obviously as well, there's a massive interest in new consoles, new games, that kind of thing. So obviously, we want to get the channel out there, so obviously we need to cover as much as possible, particularly indie developers, as we do have a soft spot in our heart for the indies out there. And a few of us have actually had a few people write and ask us to cover their games as well, so that's really nice. Anyway, hopefully this rant has not bored you to tears, and I'm really hoping that it's kind of given you a little bit of food for thought. And please leave comments. Please do. If you disagree with me, or you agree with me, or you want to, kind of haggle over pricing, whatever you want to do, just feel free to let me know. Obviously, at the moment, a lot of this is, well, up in the air. Let's go with. It's not out this second or anything, but let's see. Let's see what happens. So, once again, guys, if you want to head on over to my ramblings or Marta's ramblings, you can go to redgamingtech.com, or you can subscribe. There will actually, before I forget, there will be a small little surprise in store for you guys who are long-time subscribers coming up soon. And we're also going to be trying to give away some more stuff, actually, in the not too distant future. Hopefully on the 200 subs mark. I can't guarantee that, but I believe it's on the 200 subs. So if you've not subscribed, do so. There will be a little gift for anyone who has. I know you've probably got a good chance as well. So now, take care of yourselves, and bye for now.